Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Revernos. In today's video, we'll be talking about files and operating system and the SYS or sys module in Python. This is a video you don't want to miss. Oftentimes when we open data sets on this channel, we'll be doing that using the pandas read CSV function, but in this video, we're going to get a little bit lower level than that and talk about how you can use base Python to open files. The first thing we'll do is create a variable called file name, and we'll set that equal to the name of the file we'd like to open, which in this case is a text file called famousspeech.txt. And then we can run that, and now we'll actually open it. And it's very easy to open it. We'll just create a variable called f, and we'll store our file in there. So we'll set that equal to open, and then we'll pass in file name. You may have to include a path before your file name depending on where your actual file and where your code is stored. So this code and my file are stored in the same location, so I don't have to pass in a path. But let's say this wasn't in your desktop and your file was, then you have to pass in something like desktop/famous speech. So just to make you aware of that. So we can go ahead and run this f equals open file name. And now we've been able to successfully open our file. So the next thing we'll do is we'll go through this file and we'll just iterate through the lines in it to see what we have. So we'll just say for a line in F, and we'll just print line. You can see here that gives us the text that's stored inside of our file. If you recognize this speech, then leave a comment letting us know what speech this is and who gave it, especially if you can know when, because this is a very important historical speech in American history. When you open a file, that file is stored in memory, and that takes computational resources to keep that connection to that file open. So when you're done using the file, you need to make sure you close the file so you can release those resources back to the operating system. Fortunately, in Python, that's very easy to do. We have f, which remember, that's what we created our file with. That's that variable name. So we'll use f that close. Make sure you have your parentheses there, and then you can run that, and now you've closed out your file. There is a way you can have your file automatically close out, and you can do that by using the with statement. So you'll type with, and then you'll open your file. So once again, remember we opened file name because that was the name of our file, and we'll open it as f. So what this is essentially saying is we will open our file name and we'll store that in the variable called f, the same way we did earlier. We're just doing this in a more concise way. And then with is essentially allowing you to keep that file open as long as you're within this first level of indentation. And then once everything inside this with statement runs, your file will automatically close. So here we'll create a variable called speech, and we'll actually use a list comprehension here to pull all of the lines from our speech into this variable called speech, and it will store them as a list. So we can go ahead and just do x for x and f. We have a video on list comprehensions on our channel, so if you're not sure what this is doing, then just go ahead and check out that video on list comprehensions. But in a nutshell, we're creating a for loop in one line of code, and we're saying for x, which will refer to each line that is within our file. So remember, each of these lines will be stored in a temporary variable called x. And then that's also what we're going to return back and store in our speech variable. In fact, we can even make this more clear and more verbose by changing x to line. So then we can go ahead and run that, and let's look at our speech variable. And you can see we have a list of which every line in our speech is stored as intended. The next thing I'll show you in this video is how you can write a file. So I've shown you how you can read a file, but what happens if you want to write a file? And actually don't follow a line for this next line of code, and I'll explain why in a second. But you can do that by typing f equals open file name, and then you'll have a comma, and you'll pass in another argument, which will be w, and that will have to be passed in as a string, so within parentheses. Now, I'm not actually going to run this, and there's a reason why. If you open something and you pass in this w, what it will actually do is overwrite this file. So this will overwrite my famous speech file, which is not what I want to do. Now, there is another mode you can open it in. If you were to pass in an x instead of a w, and then run this, it will give you an error saying that file exists. And so this X gives you the protection of returning an error if that file exists. If you pass in W, you'll overwrite your file, which is not what we want to do here. However, if you want to create a new file and you want to give it a new name, so we'll just call this random file, and you want to do that and you want to be able to write to it, then you can pass in the W and you'll just have to pass in the whatever file name you want to do. And then that will create a new file called randomfile.txt, and that will be in write mode, so you'll be able to append text to it. I'll show you how you can write text to a file later in this video, but for now we'll just close this and move on to the next thing. Next, we'll cover 3 commonly used functions for reading files. So we'll go ahead and we'll open our file again. We'll open our speech. So we'll open file name and we'll pass in R. The default is read mode, so you don't actually have to pass this in, but just to show you what letter that would be, I'll just be a little more explicit and type it out here. The first function I'll show you is read. And read, what it does is it reads a certain number of characters. And so if we type in f.read, let's say 20, it will give us the first 20 characters of our file. What counts as a character is actually determined by the way the file is encoded, or raw bytes if the file is open in binary mode. So if we can copy this, we want to copy that and paste it. Now we want to read, but in binary mode. So you'll just pass in a B after your R. And then let's copy and paste this. And now you'll see we're in binary mode and it's giving us the first 20 characters as defined by the raw bytes inside of the file. Imagine you have a pointer that keeps track of where you are in the file, and every time you read, you're moving that pointer ahead and reading more of your file. But let's say you want to know where that pointer is and you want to know where you are in your file. Well, that's what the tail function does. So if we just pass in tail, it gives us 20, because remember, we've read 20 characters or 20 raw bytes in this case because we're in read binary mode. So when we pass in tail, it gives us 20, essentially telling us we've read 20 characters so far. Earlier in the video, I mentioned that the read reads a certain number of characters, and the character is defined by the way the file is encoded. So how can you actually tell how your file is decoded? Well, you'll use the sys module for that. So you'll import sys, and then you can just type in sys get default encoding, and this will give you the default encoding for your files, which here is UTF-8. So we've covered read and we've covered tail, but let's say you want to change, let's say, where that pointer is located. So we're currently at the 20th character. Let's say we want to go back to the 10th character or go forward to a character. It depends on what you're trying to do. But for that, you would use the seek method. So we'll type f seek 10. And now if we were to actually read, let's just read one character here, and it gives us A. And if we were to go to the 10th character here, that would be an A. I believe that is right there. That first A in and. Yes, because that's the only A in there. And so you can see we've reset where we are. So we were at 20. We used the seek function to go to character 10. Then we read that and it's A. Also, remember Python is indexed at 0. So when we pass in 10, that's technically the 11th character inside of this string, inside of our file. The last thing I'll show you how to do is write to a text file. But before we do that, make sure you run the close on all the files you may have opened going through this exercise. And now I'll show you how you can write to a file. We'll recreate our variable called f, and we'll actually make a new file. We'll just call this randomtext.txt. Make sure you have your file extension, and we'll open that in W or write mode. So we'll go ahead and run that. And then we'll call f.writelines, and we'll just pass in subscribe to Revernos, because you absolutely should subscribe to Revernos, especially if you made it this far into the video. Then run that, and then we'll just go ahead and close that out to make sure we're closing everything. And then if you go inside your directory, you should be able to see a file called randomtext.txt. And then if you open that, it should say subscribe to Revernos. So I'll just go ahead and show you the file that I have. You can see it right there. Subscribe to Revernos. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Subscribe and click the notification bell so you don't miss an upload. Also, we have a lot of great content on our channel, and we have a lot of great content coming in the future about Python programming, data analytics, machine learning, physical computing using Raspberry Pis, and cloud computing and Amazon Web Services. So make sure you subscribe so you can view all of those videos coming in the future and support the channel. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.